And welcome back to another episode of the Dragon Heads podcast. I am your master of ceremonies, Thorn. With me, as always, my lovely hosts. We've got Dragon Joe and Dungeon Kyle. How are you guys doing tonight?
Been a long week.
There's
Let's just keep it at that.
Yeah, I feel
Agreed.
that. The good old summer months, going into what is it, fall for us, so getting ready for football season. I'm trying to buy a house. It's just madness. So tonight's show is kind of a cobbled together mishmash of what we could come up with on short notice. So I hope you guys enjoy this because we're going places. No news this week. Let's roll right into our top five. So we're doing top five-ish Dnd Media, kind of going, we've got comics, we've got TikTokers, we've got content in the books, not doing the big stuff. Obviously, everybody knows Critical Role, all of the shows, all of the YouTube channels. We're going with some of the other content that's out there. So, Joe, why don't you start us off with your five? You're leaning more towards the comic side.
I'm a big fan of webcomics, and the couple things that I don't like about webcomics is that whenever they have slow updates, like something that's only once a week, it's one of those things that I'll catch up with a comic that I found, out of the blue, and then when I caught up, I'll forget about it for a year, and then I'll have another big jump to catch up on.
I have
So
that
I
same
mean,
issue, but with anime.
it can be the same thing with anime, manga, whatever. I mean, take your pick. But so I'm gonna talk the five comics that I want to at least make people aware of. If you like D&D, these five comics are most likely for you. Um, the first one is a comic called Flaky Pastry. It is about it originally started off as these like roommates that were all like there was an elf roommate, there was a goblin roommate, and there was like a cat girl roommate, and that was the initial plot, and that whole series has evolved from them being roommates to the just madness is the best way to put it. Is they they go dungeon diving in one part of it. They go back to the realm of goblins. They go back to the realm of elves, and each time they're dealing with each character's own, part of their backstories, part of their problems. They get cursed at different times. It is right up that D&D sort of alley where everything's kind of interesting, and the characters are very very memorable. Uh, they just they stick out to me, and I every time I'm going back to it, I'm like, okay, I got to refresh on who's who. But as soon as I do that, I love it every single time. Um, Next up, I've got Looking for Group, and where Flaky Pastry is a bit more of like the strip comic, maybe little like a page of comics. Looking for Group is full on like a comic book, and they release like a comic book page. I believe it's 3 times a week, and it's much better because it's very consistent with their things. Again, it's one of the ones that I kind of fell off of at one point, but the different characters in that one are a little bit of archetypal, and they remind me a little bit of World of Warcraft to an extent because there's kind of like an elf prince or former prince. There's the healer orc. There's what I would call a Tauren cow person minotaur, however you want to put it. Um, and then there's the undead warlock who his name's Richard. He has his own little like subset of comics in that same site called Tiny Dick Adventures. Like they just use his name to make dick jokes. It's hilarious.
Okay. Yeah, I'm digging that. Nothing wrong with a good dick joke.
But I believe they've got they cut their comic into different books. I believe that when I looked recently, they're on book 54. I mean, it's been a long running comic, and plenty there if you've never seen it before. Plenty for you to dive into. The third one is I've recently gotten into webcomics, the app for your phone, and it's called the Weekly Roll. I've seen them on Reddit. I've seen them on Facebook D&D groups, and it's one of those things that they make. It's been a really good comic where they have these different people in there. They have the paladin that's carrying a brick on a rope. They've got the half orc that doesn't really talk. She more like she communicates in kind of grunts, and then like grunts and smiles is the best way I have to put it, because whenever they're like, "Are you gonna kill me?" She just gets this big grin and has a giant great sword. And there's a necromancer that doesn't want to pay his taxes. There's a tiefling warlock that they actually just kind of introduced within like the last 10 or 12 episodes, where she kind of joined the group, and everything about it is very, very interesting. And they definitely tend more towards the chaotic, like what the heck is going on, but it's fun to read, really good. The next one is called Dollar and Wolf Trading Company. It's also on that app. They are, again, I've also seen this on Reddit and the Facebook D&D groups. It's really, really interesting because, again, they have like fledgling adventurers learning, different magical abilities, learning how to use a sword properly, how to use a bow and arrow properly. And then they've got Guy Craig, who just wants to walk around. He's this big, like, half orc, where he walks around and starts bashing people with his fist. But the name of the comic is based off of Dollar and Wolf, who are these partners that own a trading company, and they send these fledgling adventurers out to get stuff for them and to take care of little mundane tasks, which perfect setup, right, for a D&D adventuring group.
Yep.
And then last but not least, this is one of my favorite comics. And as much as I want to say it's D&D, it's kind of D&D adjacent, because they tend more towards like the steampunk, like steampunk Victorian era with different like alternate history sort of thing. But it's called Girl Genius, and the whole thing follows this the main character Agatha around, and she's this lost heir to the Hetedyne Empire, the Hetedyne Castle, and it's like everyone else has been trying to, for lack of a better word, try to take over this castle because it's so powerful and so amazing. And she walks in, and it recognizes her as, oh yeah, you're actually a Hetedyne, so I'll listen to you. And it's one of those weird things where they have multiple love interests for her. I think the tagline for the whole series is adventure, romance, mad science. It's a great series, and I literally have lost count of how many years I've been reading that series, because it's so good. It's so it always keeps my attention. Like where some of these other series, like, I've fallen off because of whatever, I have literally gone back to the beginning of that and read straight through, just so that I would make some of those little connections that I didn't make the first time I read through it. It's that good.
Yeah, I'm gonna definitely have to check some of these out.
Yeah. So Brock, what sort of media are you bringing to our attention?
So, being back into D&D somewhat recently, I don't know about comic books or the online comics. Just getting into some of the podcasts, like still very much trying to catch up on Critical Role. But because I have 2 teenage kids and a wife who love TikTok, I had to join TikTok because they kept showing me funny stuff and I wanted to join in. Well, I found D&D TikTok. So I've got 4 of my favorite D&D TikTokers that I follow. Starting off with Brooklyn Tuesday. She does a little bit of rules. She does a little bit of funny. And she does like DM help. Some of her funny stuff is absolutely hysterical, but she likes to take rules and kind of push them to their limits. Like, I believe one of hers was how to turn a bunch of goblins into missiles to shoot through the bottom of a boat. Like using different spells and stuff. So she goes kind of all over the place with what she covers. And then my next one, this guy, he's a rule breaker. He's goes by D&D Shorts over on TikTok. He builds classes, but not so much builds classes. He takes spells and classes and takes the language within that to absolutely maximize, like, to piss a DM off. Like, he came up with a way to use, like, 3 spells to basically one-shot a Tarrasque.
I think I've seen him over on YouTube too. Yeah.
I gotta look this up.
He is like
No.
He's good. Like he uses the spells to do like according to the language. It'll
Rules are
work.
written.
Yeah, like it'll work,
Yeah,
but you got to do some very specific stuff.
If I remember one of his more recent ones, he was talking about the genie warlock and make your lamp or your thing a ring and be pack of the chain, so you have a familiar that's a raven. So then you can pop into the ring, have the raven take the ring and infiltrate pretty much everywhere. And I think it's at 10th level you can take the whole party in there. And into your vessel, that's what it's called. Into your vessel. And then so it's like everyone pops out of the vessel and it's a super surprise sneak attack from this little vessel, and you're able.
Yeah, it's like what's a bird flying in here for? This is like a war
And
room, and it's like
the next thing you know, surprise, motherfucker.
Yeah. Like, and that's all of his content is like, he's like, I'm going to piss off, I'm going to make up something that you can use to just piss off your DM. And then my next one is, I'm horrible with names. I made this joke earlier when I was at lunch with my buddy that I did my previous show with, because I can't pronounce names. I'm terrible. Nicolle. I believe that's how you say it. I don't know, but I'm going with it. She does more of the funny stuff. She does D&D classes as roommates, and they're pretty good. It's pretty good stuff. Another one is zodiac signs as classes. So if you want a good laugh and you come across your zodiac sign and it's like I'm not even sure what Libra is, but she pairs them up pretty good and good content. Well, my top favorite, I love this guy. He's a DM. He'll do lives of him DMing games. He talks about DM rules, goes over new player stuff, but his best content coming from Dominic Ciarrocchi. I think that's how you say it. You got to look him up on TikTok. He dresses as a wizard, sits in front of a green screen that looks like an office, and he does D&D call center or like help desk. And you just hear his side of the call, and he's like, so you want to shoot a fireball, but you're not a wizard. And then he just goes through, and you can see it on his face. as if he's actually working in a call center taking an absolutely ridiculous phone call. Um,
Bro,
it is
that would
so funny. It is so
that
funny.
concept, but with a devil that's trying to make packs to gain
He,
rank.
he is so good with it. And then when he has a like a magical wand because he's dressed as a wizard, and when he hangs up, he like clicks his wand. And it does a little poof at the end, and then he usually says something or is like, "I need a drink after that." Because like I don't know if he just makes up these scenarios or he finds these scenarios on Reddit, because some of these scenarios I could see somebody actually asking. Um, but he's hilarious all the way around, and he does a lot of helpful stuff like talking about rules and stuff like that. So definitely, um, if you're looking for TikTok D&D stuff, these four will cover the funny, extreme rules, rules breakdown, and like DM and new player help across the board. These four are phenomenal. So Kyle, I think you're going a little bit different than both me and Joe. Why don't you tell us what type of stuff you're bringing to the top 5 tonight?
Yeah, I must have missed a memo. Of you guys brought like sources of media. I brought like examples. So, the first one is somebody on Reddit, but like I'm gonna horribly um mess up this name, but it's gone gone rate my baby. I don't know. They made a Zelda 5e um complete monster compendium. So it's a 5e compatible monster compendium of all the Zelda creatures.
Oh wow.
So yeah, my most favorite one is the cucko, the chicken. You know, when you hit it, it kept summoning more chickens. Like this thing, like if you hit this right and it survives, it summons 1d8 plus 2 more cucko per round appear until the original cucko can no longer see you.
What the
So is it for all Zelda monsters? Is it for just
Yes,
like
for everything.
for all the games? Like not just
Yeah,
like Breath of the Wild? Okay.
I'm assuming yes. Like
That's
it's got
insane.
everything. Like I see Twilight. Yes, I see Twilight Princess monsters in here. Like yes, there's some older ones. Yes, it's all of them. I'll have the. It's a. I found it on Reddit, so we'll have it linked down in the description.
Yep.
Okay.
It's pretty. It's pretty awesome to be honest. But so another example is from my personal. I got this book on physical copy, and I bought it for the guys here at the podcast. But it's a book of many monsters, something like 500 pages. It's great, and in there is a mimic map.
That's mean.
Yes.
That's mean.
So, but like, what's cool about it is it can it's obviously it's a map, but it's a mimic. But when it's not showing its face in that, the map that it shows is a map to lead back to its mother mimic, which is even more mean. But I don't know. I'm that DM that will throw weird things at it. It's not very hard to get rid of it. Like the grapple to get the DC to get out of the grapple is a 13.
I
So
say yeah, with a map you could at least chuck that and
yeah,
just be like, I'm done.
exactly. So um
I was gonna say I think one of my favorite things about uh like having a lot of monsters like that is not only having monsters to attack your players with, but have like just fun, interesting monsters to have them interact with. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's
one of the
totally
ones,
what this would be. They're
one of the
looting a
ones that I,
room.
yeah, one of the ones I came across recently in a D&D podcast was a jackalope. Um, uh, now, first off, you guys have you heard of like a jackalope in real life?
It's a rabbit with deer horns that goes invisible.
Yes, and
Yeah,
drinks whiskey.
yeah.
Right. Like like there's a whole like legitimate like
Only way you can see it is if
mythos.
you're absolutely cracked. You got to get hammered to see them.
Yeah, or they let you see them is the other thing I heard. But like they had a whole interesting interaction with this jackalope, and the jackalope, they actually helped the jackalope that was running away from something, and then the jackalope actually led them to the thing they were looking for. Um, so it was one of those things. I was like, oh, that's a cool little thing, to kind of do that. And it's like the one guy kept giving him little cups of whiskey, to which he was all about the whiskey, and it was just like, wow, that's really really cool. And it got their players interacting in interesting ways. I'm sorry, I'm getting you off topic, Kyle. What else did you have?
No, I had a few of these kind of comics as you were referring to them. Let me bring them up here. One's like a tweet. It was like, I don't know, they're just ones that I had old saved on my phone that I thought were real funny. This one's like, the Dungeons and Dragons movie should kill off a character only to have a party meet a new character played by the same actor in the next scene. Exactly. Anybody that understands D&D will find this funny. Like, it's great. And then,
Like I just
uh,
picture Indigo Montoya doing his famous monologue, getting killed, and then he comes back in a different scene as another character.
that'd be funny. And then, like, you know, I'm one of those more brutal DMs, so I find it like brutal humor is funny. So this one's like, the party's stuck on a puzzle. And they're like, it makes no sense. And it's like it shows like the DM. It's like the DM that stole it from a kid's meal. And he says, "Well, it would if you were smarter." I don't know. To me, that just from a DM standpoint, it's kind of funny because I've been in this same situation before. It's like I've given my players something extremely simple, and they were baffled for like over an hour.
Oh, in a couple of our sessions, our Sunday sessions, there's been times where it's here, do this, and we just go absolutely off the rails because we're like, I don't want to touch it because we're gonna die. So we're cutting stone arms off of statues, and it's like,
Yeah,
nope, you didn't have to do that. You could have just grabbed it.
I think one of my favorite ones was there was a puzzle, and there were like different symboled tiles on the floor, and different symboled tiles did different things. Well, I figured out that, hey, the one tile, I jump on the one tile, turned out to be a good tile, and it gives you temporary HP. Well, then I'm like, screw it, I'm gonna jump from this one to that one to that one to that one. That was my solution, and it was like, yeah, that works, and you've got a bunch of temporary hit points. But next thing I know, I'm like, okay, now what? Nope, nope, that was it. Okay.
Yeah,
huh,
It's just one of those things. I was just like,
it
okay, I
had
don't get what the puzzle was.
it had all of us picking a different like animal tile and jumping from it one by one, thinking we were gonna get buffs. And nope, you just happened to get the one tile that gave the buff, and then ate them
Right.
all. But it was one of those things where it was like we went super complicated with it. It was like literally you could just walk across the tiles and nothing would happen.
We were overthinking it big time.
Way overthinking it.
sometimes like that's the beauty of it. You give them something simple, you let the players do what they do. If they overthink it and turn it into something way bigger, roll with it as a
Mm-hmm.
DM. You know what I'm saying? Just keep going. A good DM will be able to make up DCs on the fly with whatever they're doing. But that's honestly about it for me.
All
All
right.
right.
So all of the things that we have in this topic today, we'll have the links down in the description of the YouTube channel and in the notes for the podcast versions. So definitely check those out. Some great comic books, some great TikTok creators, and then a couple new books to kind of check out for new monsters. That Zelda one sounds super dope. But
I'll link to Reddit.
yep, we'll throw the Reddit in there and make sure everybody's able to find the stuff that we're talking about tonight. But let's get into this main discussion. We're going to be talking about plot hooks. So take us away here, Mr. Joe, because I learned a new word in pre-show because of this topic. So I'm going to
That
let
was
Joe
great.
take this.
Joe, I am so
Well-
happy you made him learn that word.
Okay, so first and foremost, I basically wanted to throw out the idea of what is a good way for a DM to drop a plot hook into the game, and what's the best way for a player that's like, oh, hey, this plot hook's really interesting. How do I engage with it? And the first thing that I told Thorn was that, well, it's all about McGuffin, and he's like, what's a McGuffin? And he searched it up real quick and is like, okay, that makes sense. A McGuffin. And the funny thing about McGuffins is all they are is they're barriers to further whatever you're trying to do. I'm gonna say this is gonna be kind of light spoilers for Tomb of Annihilation, so bear with me here. But at one point, you meet a powerful wizard, and she says, I know where the tomb of Ciarrocchi is, but you have to do something for me first. It's that, well, yes, I know where it is, and I'll tell you where it is, but you got to do something for me. Okay, well, what do we got to do for you? Go get this black orchid out of another wizard's garden.
So that quest that she just gave would be the McGuffin.
Well, the item is what I always consider the McGuffin.
Okay.
Because like there's always that off chance of, well, what if she says, well, I want a dragon skull, and you randomly reach in your bag of holding and pull out a dragon skull. Well, hey, I've got that McGuffin in my bag. That works too. So it's something that people want in exchange for it. It's the key to the magical door. If you go like not Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, where they have the key to the secret door into the side of the Lonely Mountain. It's things like that where you have this thing that you need to find in order to move the story along. Whether it's a key, whether it's a payment for information, or it can be all kinds of things. It can be a way across an ocean, a way to disperse the magical fog, a magical item to remove a curse. Anything along these lines all can become McGuffins. And a McGuffin is just an old term that's like, hey, it's this thing, and rather than call it, a curse, a curse removal, it's a McGuffin. It is a thing that you can get to basically figure it out.
So, because I learned what this is today, just moments ago, and I was looking it up, it actually stems from an Alfred Hitchcock episode where somebody asks about a bag, and the guy says, it's a McGuffin. That's literally it. Just a bag on a train in an old Alfred Hitchcock thing has turned into a whole, like, plot point for stories and movies. Yeah, like, all because some guy called a bag that on an episode of an Alfred Hitchcock show. Like, it's crazy. Just a little bit of history on the word and where it comes from, because I had to look that up also, because I was like, why would anybody use this word? Like, this word makes no sense to me. But so just a little fun history on the terminology there for us.
Well, and to go further your point, like one of the most well-known McGuffins to ever grace a film is the briefcase to Pulp Fiction.
Mm-hmm.
We never find out what's in it. We never find, it's just because it's there and everybody wants it and everyone's fighting over it, that makes it the McGuffin. You know what I mean? It's I've got the spell book of this ancient wizard that everyone's trying to get. I have the Infinity Gauntlet that everyone's trying to get, That's what every time you have one of those things, that becomes the McGuffin of that story. So now here's the better question is as a DM, how do you put a plot point out, or for lack of a word, a McGuffin? And the couple things that I do as a DM is I like to give players like roads and see if they follow them. And it's one of those things like I immediately think of Ford in Critical Role. It's like he found this cloven crystal, and immediately gets absorbed into his body. And initially he's like, I don't know what the heck just happened. But lo and behold, whenever he finds out later that he needs to place that in one of the temples to release Ukatoa, his patron, it becomes a whole thing because all of a sudden he's going, well, man, I don't know if I really want to do this or not. But he said he also finds out that because I didn't put it in one of those temples, every other follower of Ukatoa is out after me and coming for me because they want that cloven crystal. And again, it was all that, hey, you found this really weird thing. What are you going to do with it? And I like giving my players that sort of agency, but it can be as simple as, okay, you take the wagon to not Fandelver, Fandolin, and it's you have to deliver these goods, but at the same time you're at like, wait, why are there dead horses? Why are there, you know, we're not going to get paid if that guy, if neither of those guys are there. All of a sudden, your McGuffin becomes a person, and you have to find that person and take them to to save them in order to just get paid. And that sort of agency is really interesting to me because especially once once players start getting a lot of spells and they start developing tactics within a group, it becomes one of those things that um, they start figuring out ways around the usual. Oh, you kidnapped the little girl. Well, she's we need her back because she's actually a princess to the king that we need to impress, and gain favor with. It's all stuff like that you want to try to do. Um, Now, as a player, I think one of the biggest things that to engage with a plot hook is to show in game that you're trying to either research about a MacGuffin, you're trying to learn more about it, like the lore of a MacGuffin, regardless if it's like a magical sword, um, something, a wizard's tower that's actually a little ball. I mean, the possibilities are endless. Of you're like, well, I found this thing, and I want to know more about it. And you expressing to the DM that, hey, this this McGuffin you gave me is really cool. How do I learn more about it? That shows the DM that, oh, hey, I like this McGuffin. I'm interested in this McGuffin. What does it do? Give me more
Uh,
lore about it. Give me more information.
that broken sword you found? Who the hell keeps a broken sword?
Yeah.
Or why does the broken sword give away a faint magical aura?
Exactly. Now,
It,
like one
it's
of my
it's
favorite. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
You were asking how we give these McGuffins out. One of my favorite things I did one time was I gave a group a used bag of holding. Okay, and I, the DM, every time they grabbed something, I had a roll on a percentile that was fairly low, but it took quite a while for me to finally hit that. And what that roll on that percentile was for them to pull out a diary from the last person that owned it, which turned out to be a warlock that was keeping notes on his quest and everything that was inside of it. So you were asking how we give it out. That's a good way to give it out. It ended up taking them. It was about 6, 7 levels of worth of them grabbing stuff in and out. So it's little things like that that just, like you said, give them the roads that if they want to, now they have this warlock's quest slash they know who their patron was, they can, contact them kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that if you give I know the one of the other things is if you somehow kidnap a player, you're able to drag the party because the rest of the party will freak out and be like, "Oh, we need to save so and so." Well, the kidnapping of that player suddenly becomes much more interesting. And I'll I'll give you some nightmare fuel. There is a I can't remember what the creature's called. It looked kind of like a slender man. This guy delved into a bag of holding and somehow got lost. And he's able to um, use any bag of holding to reach out and grab people, and he'll leave some sort of trinket as an exchange and pull someone into the bag of holding. This is one of those weird things that, because it's magic and because it's wonky, it gets around like Liamon's tiny hut. It gets around uh, the magnificent mansion. Stuff where players feel they're safe. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden they wake up and there's just a bag of holding there and some like brooch instead of their friend. All of a sudden they're like, what the heck happened? And I would leave some sort of clue that they went into the bag of holding, and you're going to have to figure out how to follow them, because that's a lot more interesting than, oh, we're hopping in a bag of holding. Okay, how does that work? It suddenly becomes, well, we're going to go to a wizard or a mage or an enchanter and find out, well, this and that, and then they have someone that, oh, we've engaged with the plot hook. You now have this wizard or enchanter tell them, oh, that must be the slender man that comes out of the bag of holding and steals people and leaves a trinket, you know. But the only way to try to truly follow him is to do X, Y, and Z. But I'll need this McGuffin to be able to send you into his demiplane.
That
Like
makes
that
sense.
that. But right, it gives you a progression, but at the same time, you're like, okay, this is what happened. Event happened. This is what they're trying to figure out. They're given some lore and some other stuff, and then we need to get these things in order to go after them. And that's one of the big things I feel like a lot of DMs don't always grasp, because they're so worried about other things, that if you can lead that sort of story and tell that sort of story, it gets the players interested and keeps them engaged. That's the hardest part of D&D, is keeping people engaged and telling a story while doing that.
Yeah, one of the things, like, I haven't DM'd yet. One of these days I will. But, like, going through this, the first thing that came to my mind is a city setting. And every NPC that you come in contact with, whether it's the tavern keep, a guard on the street, a bread vendor, everybody lightly talks about a fountain in the center of the city. It's a gathering place. It's, a place for children to play, like whatever it might be. Everyone has a story about the fountain. But on the edge of the fountain is written an inscription, and if the players read the inscription, the fountain floor falls out and leads to a dungeon. So like the plot hook that first came to my mind is getting people in the city to just, every time they interact, just a small hint of this fountain. But then the players have to pick up on those interactions and actually go to the fountain and inspect it and look at it. I don't know if that's quite what we're talking about here, but that's like the plot hook to push them there without just saying, there's a fountain, you should go look at it. Because I feel like that's kind of the shallow way to DM that scenario. Like, you make it a little more interesting. Maybe if it's taken too long, you bump up the suggestions a little bit more. Like, there's weird sounds coming from the fountain. People have gone missing at the fountain.
No, I get what you're doing, and honestly, like I would consider that a McGuffin. I don't know if Joe, you would consider that a McGuffin with your kind of strict
Well,
look on.
it's not like one of those things that I try to strictly identify it, but again, you're stopping your players from doing something to further the plot, so therefore it's a MacGuffin, in my opinion.
That's true. That's very true. The only thing is like with that example is you gotta do something a little bit more than just reading the inscription because if it's in the middle of a city, somebody at some point has read the inscription
True.
so that
Yeah.
would reveal the thing and everybody would know. So
In that case, it might be one of those things that the inscription tells you where the key is, and then you have to go find the key, and then the key becomes a little bit of a MacGuffin.
Yep.
But
yeah,
again, it's making a barrier of some sort, and then finding a way through that barrier is all about MacGuffins.
and honestly, like that's what drives any setting and or session is good McGuffins, clear McGuffins,
Yeah,
challenging McGuffins,
I
something
was
that
even gonna say if you make a MacGuffin that is too simple or too easy, it sometimes is like that is interesting. It's one of the things. Oh, if you got the key to the magical door, oh that wasn't interesting. But oh, the key to the magical door is a dragon's tooth that you have to pull from the dragon itself. Oh, okay, that's a little more interesting.
Yeah.
you got to look at it from like the player standpoint. You don't want to make it too easy, as in like these people walk into the dungeon. In this room, they see a vase on
Mm.
a pedestal. Obviously, you break it. It is the key. The next room is a dungeon that needs a key. Kind of type thing. You don't want to make it like that.
Absolutely.
So,
Did you guys have anything else to add about MacGuffins and plot hooks?
I didn't.
Anna? No.
I think we finally exhausted the conversation.
Yeah. It was, like I said at the beginning of the show, this was kind of a thrown together episode because everybody had a pretty busy and hectic week this past week. So not a whole lot of time to read up on things and get the most prepared, but I do think that we were able to get together enough stuff and talk about things. And
Still
I
quality
learned
talk.
a new word today. I'm almost 40 and I learned a new word. That's
Proud of
what
you,
we're
bro.
here for. Come on now.
I'll have to
Proud
find
of you.
some more words for you.
Yeah. Believe me, I have a Lorraine education. It doesn't take a whole lot. You'll only get that if you're from Ohio, folks. Sorry, that's an inside joke. But no rulebook corner this week. Again, we didn't have too much time. No encounter this week, so we're going to skip over those. So we're going to wrap up the show. This was kind of a quick and easy one this week. Hopefully we should all have a little bit more time to put something together. We're going to start on next week's show notes early this week. I say that because I say that to myself every week, and then I get busy.
Sunday night.
Yeah.
Well,
Then we
we
sit
all
down
have.
20 minutes before the show and figure out what we're doing.
Hey,
That's about
you
right.
gotta do what you gotta do what you gotta do. We all
Yep.
have jobs.
Yep. Jobs and
So
families, man. That's the pains of adulthood right there. I've got two 18-year-olds who are just like, I'm going to play video games and I'm going to do this. And I'm like, yes, it's all fun and games until you become a real adult and you have to pay bills. Just remember that, kids.
Yeah.
But that's going to wrap us up for tonight. We are Twitch affiliates, so you can head over to twitch.tv/DragonHeadsPod. Hit that follow button, hit that subscribe button. We will shout you out on the show. Helps out the show. And if you got Amazon Prime, that means you got Twitch Prime, so you can hit the subscribe button absolutely free, nothing out of your pocket. Helps out the show. Helps out Kyle get that mic or that camera we've been talking about. You can email the show over at DragonHeads2. Or I'm sorry, follow the show on Twitter at DragonHeads2 and email the show at dragonheads216@gmail.com. One of these days, I'm going to get all these things all unified under one term because I'm going to actually submit like requests for names because it's a pain keeping up with the 4 different titles that we have. Join us over on the Discord at discord.me/dragonheads. Follow the show right here on Twitch. Like I said, twitch.tv/dragonheadspod. We record live Mondays, 9 p.m. Eastern, and our intro music, A Self-Induced Psychosis by my buddy, Mr. Kyle Wynn, who just moved all the way across the United States over to Boston from Sacramento, California. Talk about a long haul. Stopped in to see me today. The internet is a great thing. Make friends. Have a good time. Play some D&D. Slay some dragons.
Good luck, adventurers.
take it easy, guys. See you next week.